I'm sure that you know that people love that Magnum PI look so much, but they still dress like you, and actually one of those people works here, and her name is Tegan. So here's this photo.
Tom Selleck was once the face of charm and success. The Magnum PI legend now stands at the edge of losing everything: his health, his fortune, and perhaps his legacy. The world had seen the hero on screen, but few knew what happened behind the smiles. The water theft scandal, a helicopter death on set, family secrets, and a ranch that became his prison.
I got nothing to plug, but if you go on a talk show and you look different every time, the people in Hollywood who watch the show, which is a lot of people, think you're working a lot.
By 2025, Tom admitted on live TV he might lose everything. His story was no longer about fame, it was about survival. And it all began long before Hollywood ever heard his name. Roots of Resilience. Thomas William Selleck entered the world on January 29, 1945 in Detroit, Michigan, during the final months of World War II. His father, Robert Dean Selleck, worked as an executive, but the family struggled financially in those early years. Detroit's cold winters and uncertain economic climate pushed Robert to make a bold decision. In 1948, when Tom was just 3 years old, the Sellecks packed everything and moved west to Sherman Oaks, California. Chasing the promise of sunshine and opportunity, Robert's gamble involved real estate investments that didn't always pay off as planned. The family lived modestly while his father worked to build something stable. Tom's mother, Martha, raised 4 children while managing the household's tight budget. Young Tom learned early that nothing came easy, and dreams required patience and hard work. Growing up in the San Fernando Valley, Tom felt like an outsider in his own body. He shot up to an awkward height, eventually reaching 6 feet 4 inches by his teenage years. He towered over classmates and felt clumsy, gangly, uncertain. Sports became his refuge. He played basketball and baseball with intensity, hoping his height might become an advantage rather than a burden. He was decent, but never the star he imagined becoming. The rejection stung quietly. When Tom turned 17, death nearly found him on Mulholland Drive. A car accident on those winding Hollywood Hills roads could have ended everything before it began. The crash left him shaken, humbled, suddenly aware of how fragile life could be. Something shifted in him after that night. The cockiness of youth gave way to a quieter determination. He realized he'd been given a second chance, and he couldn't waste it. After graduating high school, Tom enrolled at Valley College, working part-time at a clothing store to save money. His real goal was the University of Southern California, where he dreamed of playing basketball seriously. He eventually made it to USC on a basketball scholarship, but his athletic dreams faded as he realized he'd never be professional material. His coach noticed something else in him, though, a natural presence, a face and bearing that suggested maybe sports weren't his destiny after all. Before any of that clarity arrived, Tom faced another kind of humiliation. He appeared on The Dating Game twice, hoping maybe television could be a doorway into something bigger. He lost both times. The rejection felt personal and public. Sitting under those bright lights, trying to be charming while knowing he'd failed, taught him something valuable. Rejection wasn't death. It was just information. It became motivation to prove himself elsewhere, in ways that mattered more than a game show prize, and the right people were about to notice him. From Pepsi ads to the battlefield. In 1965, while still at USC studying business administration, Tom Selleck landed a Pepsi advertisement that paid better than anything he'd earned folding shirts at the clothing store. The camera loved his face, strong jawline, easy smile, an all-American look that sold products without trying too hard. That single commercial changed everything. Suddenly, acting seemed less like a fantasy and more like a legitimate path forward. 20th Century Fox noticed him and offered a spot in their acting program, a training ground for potential stars. Tom accepted, abandoning his business degree to chase something far less certain. His family worried. His father had worked hard to provide stability, and now Tom was gambling on Hollywood, a place that chewed up and discarded thousands of hopeful faces every year. But Tom had already survived one near-death experience. He wasn't afraid of long odds anymore. Then came 1967, and the Vietnam War draft. Tom received his notice and joined the California National Guard, serving for 6 years while watching other young actors build careers he couldn't access. He missed auditions, lost roles, fell behind peers who stayed civilian. Those years felt like punishment, like time stolen from a future that was already uncertain. But he showed up, did his duty, and learned discipline that most actors never acquired. The military didn't make him a star, but it made him reliable, punctual, and resilient, qualities that would matter later. When Tom finally returned to acting full-time, he threw himself into serious training. He studied under Milton Katselas at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, an intense instructor known for breaking down students and rebuilding them as genuine performers. Katselas didn't tolerate laziness or ego. Tom absorbed the lessons, learning that acting required more than good looks and charm. It demanded honesty, vulnerability, and relentless work. The early jobs were humbling. He modeled for Salem Cigarettes, his handsome face selling a product he didn't even use. Television parts came sporadically, small roles that paid bills but led nowhere. Casting directors told him he was too tall, too imposing, not quite right for leading man roles, but too noticeable for background work. He existed in a frustrating middle space where his physical presence became a liability rather than an asset. Rejection piled up like unpaid bills. He auditioned constantly, hearing no far more than yes. The humility he'd learned from basketball failures and game show defeats deepened. Hollywood didn't care about his potential or his work ethic. It cared about what sold, and for years, Tom Selleck apparently didn't sell. He kept training, kept auditioning, kept believing that eventually the right role would find him. He just had no idea how long that wait would be, or how many failures he'd have to endure before everything changed. What Tom didn't know yet was that his biggest humiliation was still coming, and it would arrive on the set of a show that promised to make him famous. But first, he'd have to survive being fired on national television. The road to Magnum P.I. The years after Tom's military service became a marathon of near misses and brutal disappointments. He landed recurring work on the Rockford Files, playing private investigator Lance White. The role should have been a breakthrough, but tension simmered between Tom and star James Garner. Garner's character was rough-edged and cynical, while Tom's character came across as too perfect, too polished. The contrast made Garner uncomfortable, and Tom felt the coldness on set. He was being paid to show up another actor, and it showed in every scene they shared. Then came Daughters of Satan in 1972, a low-budget horror film shot in the Philippines. During one scene, a fire effect went wrong and flames erupted too close to Tom. He escaped serious injury, but the incident rattled him. The movie flopped anyway, barely noticed by audiences or critics. Tom was earning a living, but barely. He wasn't building a career. He was surviving one failed project at a time. The worst humiliation arrived in 1976, when Tom was cast in Charlie's Angels, the show that would launch Farrah Fawcett and others into superstardom. He filmed the pilot episode, appeared on screen, and then producers fired him immediately afterward. No explanation softened the blow. He simply wasn't what they wanted. By the late 70s, Tom seriously considered quitting. He'd spent over a decade chasing roles that never materialized into anything meaningful. He was in his mid-30s, an age when most actors either break through or accept they never will. His marriage to model Jacqueline Ray was strained by financial pressure and constant disappointment. Tom wondered if his father had been right. Maybe business school would have been the safer choice. Then came the call about Magnum P.I. CBS needed a lead for a new Hawaiian detective series. Tom read the script and saw potential, but the character felt too stiff, too typical. He met with creator Donald Belisario and made a pitch. Let Magnum be flawed, funny, human. Let him make mistakes and admit when he's wrong. Let him drive a Ferrari, but live in someone else's guest house. Make him aspirational, but relatable. Strong, but vulnerable. Belisario listened and agreed to rewrite the character around Tom's vision. When the show premiered in December 1980, audiences responded immediately. Magnum wasn't another square-jawed hero. He was charming and capable, but also broke, sometimes scared, occasionally wrong. He wore shorts and Hawaiian shirts instead of suits. He drove other people's cars and mooched off friends. Tom had helped create a character that felt real, and viewers fell in love with that authenticity. Within a year, Tom won an Emmy. Global fame followed. Magazine covers, fan mail, recognition, everywhere he went. Everything he'd worked for suddenly arrived all at once. But success brought complications he never anticipated. The pressure was immense, the schedule exhausting, and behind the scenes, personal costs were already mounting. And soon, one contract clause would cost him the role of a lifetime, and a fortune he'd never recover. The price of fame. Success with Magnum P.I. brought everything Tom had dreamed of, but it also exposed what fame truly cost. The show demanded brutal hours, 14-hour days under the Hawaiian sun, 6 days a week, month after month. Tom had no time for anything beyond memorizing lines and hitting marks. His marriage to Jacqueline Ray, already strained by years of financial struggle, couldn't survive the new pressures of celebrity. In 1982, they divorced quietly. Tom blamed himself for prioritizing career over family, but he didn't know how to do both. That same year, while performing in London's West End production of Cats, Tom noticed a British dancer named Gilly Mack. She moved with grace and confidence that captivated him immediately. He returned to watch the show multiple times, eventually working up the courage to introduce himself. Their relationship developed secretly, away from cameras and gossip columns. Tom had learned that fame turned every private moment into public property, so he guarded Gilly fiercely. In 1987, they married in a small Nevada ceremony under fake names, Tom Jenkins and Susie Mark. Only close family attended. For once, Tom controlled the narrative of his own life instead of letting tabloids write it for him. The secrecy felt like rebellion against an industry that believed it owned him. But the biggest professional heartbreak came when Steven Spielberg offered Tom the lead role in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones could have been his. The character fit perfectly. Adventurous, charming, flawed, exactly the kind of hero Tom played naturally. But CBS refused to release him from his Magnum P.I. contract. The studio owned his time completely, and they weren't about to let their golden goose fly away for a movie that might or might not succeed. Harrison Ford took the role instead. Raiders became a massive franchise worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Tom stayed in Hawaii, playing Magnum, earning steady television money while watching what could have been his legacy belong to someone else. The loss haunted him for years. He never blamed Ford, but he resented the system that treated actors like property rather than artists. Then tragedy struck on set. During a helicopter scene in 1980, a stunt went horribly wrong. The helicopter crashed, killing the pilot. Tom witnessed the accident, watched a man die doing his job. The incident shook the entire production. Tom became obsessed with on-set safety afterward, fighting with studios and insurance companies to implement stricter protocols. He used his star power to demand changes that protected crew members, refusing to let another preventable death occur on his watch. The parallels between Magnum's life and Tom's own became impossible to ignore. Both carried loss quietly and smiled through pain. The character Tom helped create was reflecting his reality more than anyone realized. Fame had given him wealth and recognition, but it had also isolated him, cost him relationships, and stolen opportunities he'd never get back. And the worst decisions were still ahead, choices that would trap him on a ranch where paradise slowly turned into prison. Between glory and grief. In 1987, Three Men and a Baby became the highest-grossing film of the year, earning over $167 million domestically. Tom played Peter Mitchell, a bachelor architect suddenly responsible for an infant. The role showcased his comedic timing and warmth, proving he could carry a major film beyond the television screen. But the movie's success came with an unexpected twist, a bizarre urban legend that refused to die. Viewers claimed they spotted a ghostly boy standing in a window during one scene. The rumor spread wildly, fueled by tabloids and early internet conspiracy theorists. People insisted the film was cursed, that a child had died in the house where they filmed. None of it was true. The supposed ghost was actually a cardboard cutout of Ted Danson's character, a simple prop visible for just a few frames, but the legend boosted ticket sales anyway. People went to theaters specifically to hunt for the ghost boy. Rewatching the scene over and over, Tom found the whole thing absurd, but he couldn't deny the publicity helped his career. The momentum didn't last. In 1990s, Tom starred in Quigley Down Under, playing an American sharpshooter in the Australian outback. Critics appreciated the film's thoughtful approach to Western genre conventions and its critique of colonialism. Tom delivered one of his finest performances, showing depth and gravitas beyond Magnum's charm, but audiences stayed away. The movie barely broke even. Hollywood noticed the box office failure more than the critical respect. Around the same time, Tim Burton was casting Batman and briefly considered Tom for the role of Bruce Wayne. Studio executives dismissed the idea quickly. Tom was too associated with television, too wholesome, too old-fashioned for Burton's dark vision. Michael Keaton got the part instead, and the film redefined superhero cinema. Once again, Tom watched a massive opportunity go to someone else while he stood on the sidelines. Yet Tom surprised everyone in 1977 when he appeared in and Out, a comedy about a small-town teacher outed as gay by a former student. Tom played a gay journalist in one scene and shared an on-screen kiss with Kevin Kline's character. For an actor who'd built his career on masculine, heterosexual roles, the mustached, tough guy icon, the choice seemed risky. Conservative fans felt betrayed. Progressive audiences appreciated the gesture, but questioned if Tom was genuine or just chasing relevance. Tom didn't explain himself much. He believed actors should take risks, play characters outside their comfort zones, challenge audiences' expectations. But Hollywood remained confused about where Tom Selleck fit. He was too progressive for traditional action stars, too traditional for Hollywood's increasingly liberal culture. He existed in an uncomfortable middle ground, respected but slightly out of step with the times. By the late 90s, Tom's film career had stalled completely. He made occasional television movies and guest appearances, but nothing captured the magic of Magnum P.I. He was a cultural icon without a clear purpose, a star whose moment seemed to have passed. Younger actors dominated screens. Tom's style of masculinity, confident but not cocky, strong but emotionally available, felt dated in an era of ironic detachment and extreme performances. He retreated more and more to his ranch in Ventura County, a sprawling property he'd purchased during Magnum's peak years. The land represented everything he'd worked for: privacy, stability, control over his own life. But isolation was creeping in, and the ranch that symbolized freedom was slowly becoming something else entirely. What Tom didn't realize yet was that his sanctuary would soon become the site of his greatest scandal. Family shadows. Tom married Jillie Mack, hoping for the stability and intimacy his first marriage had lacked. In 1988, their daughter, Hannah Margaret Selleck, was born, and Tom made a deliberate choice to shield her from the Hollywood machinery that had consumed his own life. He moved the family permanently to the 63-acre ranch in Ventura County, far from paparazzi and studio politics. Hannah grew up riding horses, helping with avocado trees, living a childhood that looked nothing like typical celebrity offspring, but isolation came with costs Tom hadn't anticipated. Hannah had few neighbors her age. Her world revolved around animals and ranch work, not school friends or social activities. Tom believed he was protecting her, giving her normalcy. What he didn't see was how the ranch's remoteness might limit her connections to the outside world. She grew up loving horses intensely, eventually competing professionally in equestrian events. But the question remained whether she chose that path freely or because the ranch left few alternatives. Tom's marriage to Jillie faced strains that money and privacy couldn't solve. The demands of maintaining the ranch, managing Tom's declining career, and raising Hannah in such isolation created tensions neither had expected. They attended marriage counseling quietly, working through problems away from public scrutiny. Unlike his first marriage, Tom fought to save this one. He loved Jillie genuinely and refused to let fame destroy another relationship. They survived, but the work was constant and exhausting. The deeper pain came from Tom's adopted son, Kevin, Jacqueline Ray's son, from a previous relationship whom Tom had legally adopted during their marriage. Kevin struggled with alcoholism throughout his adult life, cycling through rehabilitation programs and relapses that broke Tom's heart repeatedly. Tom paid for treatment, offered support, tried everything he knew to help Kevin find stability. Nothing worked permanently. Kevin accumulated debts. Tom quietly covered, trying to prevent his son's life from completely unraveling. The guilt weighed heavily. Tom wondered if his absence during Kevin's formative years, all those hours on Magnum sets, all those missed dinners and school events, had contributed to Kevin's struggles. He couldn't undo the past, couldn't reclaim the time he'd sacrificed for career. All he could do was keep trying to help, keep paying bills, keep hoping the next rehab program would be the one that finally worked. The ranch became a symbol of everything complicated in Tom's life. He'd bought it as proof he'd made it, as a fortress against Hollywood's chaos. He planted avocado trees as investments and oaks for beauty. He built stables for Hannah's horses and walking trails for quiet reflection. The property represented hard-earned success and family values, the American dream realized through decades of work. But the ranch also trapped him. Maintaining 63 acres required constant money, constant attention, constant worry. The avocados needed water during droughts. The fences needed repairs. Property taxes climbed every year. What had started as a sanctuary was becoming a burden, an expensive monument to a version of success that no longer felt sustainable. Tom looked around his property some evenings and wondered if he'd built a prison instead of paradise. His daughter was thriving, but isolated. His marriage was intact, but strained. His adopted son was drowning, despite every rescue attempt. And the land itself, beautiful, sprawling, peaceful, demanded more from him every year. Then came the drought, and with it, a decision that would shatter Tom's carefully protected reputation forever. The ranch scandal. California's historic drought began in 2012 and worsened each year. By 2015, the state was experiencing the driest conditions in over a millennium. Governor Jerry Brown imposed mandatory water restrictions. Lawns turned brown across wealthy neighborhoods. Farmers watched crops die. Reservoirs dropped to alarming levels. Everyone was expected to sacrifice, to cut back, to endure together. Tom's 63-acre ranch, however, continued receiving water, lots of it. His avocado trees and ancient oaks needed irrigation to survive. The property had always consumed enormous amounts of water, but during the drought, those needs became impossible to justify. Tom faced a choice: watch his investment die or find water somehow. He chose the latter, and the decision destroyed him publicly. In 2015, the Caleguas Municipal Water District filed a lawsuit against Tom, accusing him of illegally taking approximately 1.4 million gallons of water from a fire hydrant and a creek near his property. The water district claimed Tom's contractors had redirected water meant for public use and environmental protection directly to his ranch during the state's worst drought in recorded history. While neighbors followed restrictions and watched their gardens wither, Tom allegedly took enough water to fill 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The media seized the story immediately. Headlines screamed about hypocrisy: the wholesome television dad, the all-American icon, stealing water, while regular Californians suffered mandatory cutbacks. Environmentalists condemned him. Neighbors felt betrayed. The contrast between Tom's public image and the allegations was too perfect for journalists to resist. Tom settled the lawsuit quickly, reportedly paying the water district a substantial sum to avoid trial. He never admitted wrongdoing directly, but the settlement implied guilt in the public's mind. His legal team argued that contractors had made decisions without Tom's full knowledge, that water rights in California are complicated, that the situation wasn't as simple as headlines suggested. None of the explanations mattered. The damage was done. The worst part came afterward. Despite Tom's efforts to save them, the drought killed approximately 2,500 avocado trees and 2,005 massive oak trees on his property, the land he'd fought to protect. The investment he'd allegedly broken laws to save died anyway. Tom later joked bitterly that he never even liked avocados, that the trees were supposed to be a smart financial hedge that became an expensive nightmare instead. The scandal didn't end his career, but it permanently stained his reputation. The man who'd played principled characters his entire life, who'd championed safety reforms and family values, was now known for allegedly stealing water during a crisis. No amount of charm or mustache twirling could erase that story. Tom stopped giving interviews about the ranch. He stopped posting photos of the property. The place that had once represented everything he'd achieved now symbolized his greatest shame. He was still living there, still paying the crushing expenses, still trapped by ownership of land that had betrayed him as much as he'd betrayed California's trust. And soon, he'd need to keep working just to hold on to the place that was slowly destroying him. Reinvention and reflection. In 2010, CBS offered Tom the lead role in Blue Bloods, a family drama about multiple generations of New York City police officers. Tom would play Frank Reagan, the police commissioner and patriarch who gathered his family for Sunday dinners each week. At 65 years old, after years of failed film projects and forgettable television movies, Tom needed steady work. He accepted. Blue Bloods became the unexpected success of Tom's later career. The show wasn't flashy or groundbreaking, but it delivered exactly what audiences wanted: traditional values, family loyalty, and moral certainty in an increasingly complicated world. Tom's portrayal of Frank Reagan felt natural, authoritative without being harsh, principled without being preachy. The famous dinner scenes, where the Reagan family debated ethics and current events around a crowded table, were actually Tom's idea. He understood that viewers craved those moments of connection. Tom took his leadership role seriously on set. Younger actors looked to him for guidance, and he mentored them the way Milton Katselas had mentored him decades earlier. He arrived prepared, hit his marks perfectly, and treated crew members with respect. Blue Bloods wasn't prestigious television, but it was honest work that paid well and kept Tom relevant. Tensions emerged as the show aged. By the early 2020s, CBS pushed for storylines addressing police reform and contemporary social justice issues. Tom reportedly resisted what he considered heavy-handed scripts. Arguments happened behind closed doors. Meanwhile, CBS began cutting budgets and reducing cast salaries. The financial pressure mounted precisely when Tom needed money most desperately. In 2024, Tom published his memoir, You Never Know, a surprisingly honest reflection on 80 years of life. He wrote about depression during his struggling years, about regrets that accumulated with age, about watching opportunities slip away while trying to make the right choices. The book revealed a man who'd spent decades projecting strength while privately battling doubt and disappointment. At 80 years old, Tom's body was failing in ways he couldn't ignore. His knees, damaged from years of doing his own stunts, caused constant pain. He'd gained weight and moved more slowly. The handlebar mustache remained, but the face beneath it showed every year of hard living. In interviews promoting the memoir, Tom admitted something shocking. He needed to keep working primarily to afford the ranch. The property had become a financial anchor. Walking away from Blue Bloods meant risking everything he'd built. But CBS had different plans, and the cancellation that followed would leave Tom facing his most uncertain future. Yet legacy in twilight. In February 2024, CBS announced that Blue Bloods would end after its 14th season. The decision devastated Tom. He'd given the network 14 years of reliable ratings, consistent performances, and leadership that kept production running smoothly. Now, when he needed the income most, CBS was pulling the plug. Tom publicly expressed disappointment, hinting that the cancellation felt premature and financially motivated rather than creative. The final episode aired in December 2024, closing the Reagan family story with one last Sunday dinner. Fans mourned the show's end, but Tom's anxiety went deeper than nostalgia. Without Blue Blood's income, how would he maintain the ranch? Property taxes alone consumed huge portions of his savings. The avocado business had collapsed years earlier. His other investments weren't enough to cover the sprawling property's endless demands. Paparazzi photographs from 2024 and early 2025 showed Tom looking frail and tired. Fans expressed concern on social media. worried about the man who'd represented strength and stability for decades. The contrast between Magnum P.I.'s athletic detective and this 80-year-old struggling with basic mobility was heartbreaking for those who'd grown up watching him. Tom Selleck had lived multiple lives. Actor, veteran, father, rancher, he'd survived rejection, tasted enormous success, made mistakes that cost him dearly, and kept working long past when most people retire. His story wasn't a simple Hollywood fairy tale. It was messier, more human, filled with regrets and wrong turns alongside genuine achievements. The ranch still stood, 63 acres of memories and burden. Tom remained there, surrounded by land he couldn't afford to keep but couldn't bear to lose. The place represented everything: his success, his failures, his stubbornness, his dreams. Walking those acres must have felt like reviewing his entire life. Every decision that led him to this precarious moment, Tom Selleck became the symbol of American strength. Square-jawed, confident, unshakable. Now, at 80, that image crumbles under the weight of reality. His body fails him. His fortune drains away. The ranch that promised freedom became his prison. Yet dignity remains. He doesn't complain or beg for sympathy. He simply keeps going, one painful step at a time. His story warns us that fame solves nothing permanently. Success can trap you as surely as failure. Aging spares no one, not even legends. His memoir said it best: "You never know how life turns. All you can do is hold steady." If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.